The late afternoon sun filtered through the windows of Rosie's diner, casting a warm glow over the booths and tables. Jake stood behind the counter, wiping down menus with practiced efficiency. At 24, his life had not gone as planned. Dreams of culinary school had given way to the reality of mounting bills and family obligations. Yet, his smile rarely wavered, a testament to the optimism he clung to like a life raft. Jake loved his job at Rosie's. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. He enjoyed chatting with the regulars, learning their quirks and preferences. His favorite among them was an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. They came in every Tuesday and Saturday, sharing stories of their long-ago travels and the joys of raising their family. Their kindness reminded Jake of his grandparents, who had raised him after his parents passed away. As the bell over the door jingled, Jake turned to see the Hendersons walking in. Mrs. Henderson's scarf fluttered in the breeze as she adjusted her husband's coat. They were beaming, and Jake quickly approached to guide them to their usual booth. "Anniversary dinner," Mrs. Henderson whispered conspiratorially as they sat down. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Jake grinned. "Congratulations. 60 years together deserves a little celebration. Let me bring you something special tonight." The couple blushed but smiled, holding hands across the table as they scanned the menu. Jake knew their order by heart: chicken pot pie for him, a turkey sandwich for her, and 2 slices of apple pie to share. As he placed the order, Jake couldn't help but think about his own future. Would he ever have a love so enduring? The meal passed with warmth and laughter. The Hendersons talked about how they met at a dance and their son David, who lived in the city and ran a business. Jake listened, genuinely enjoying their stories. When it came time to settle the bill, Mr. Henderson pulled out his wallet. His hand trembled slightly as he handed over a credit card. Jake ran it through the machine, but the terminal beeped sharply, the word declined flashing on the screen. Jake's heart sank. "I'll try again," he said, though he suspected the result would be the same. It was. Mr. Henderson's face turned crimson. "I don't understand," he stammered. "It worked yesterday." "It's fine," Jake said quickly, trying to spare them embarrassment. "Maybe the machine's acting up. Do you have another card?" Mrs. Henderson rummaged through her purse, but her expression told Jake they didn't. She whispered something to her husband, who shook his head. Jake saw their distress and made a split-second decision. "You know what? Dinner's on me tonight. Happy anniversary." Mrs. Henderson's eyes filled with tears. "Oh no, Jake, we couldn't possibly." "It's nothing," Jake said with a reassuring smile. "You've been coming here for years. It's my way of saying thank you." The couple looked at him, their gratitude palpable. Mr. Henderson tried to argue, but Jake gently insisted. "Consider it a gift. Just promise you'll come back next week and tell me another one of your stories." As they left the diner, Mrs. Henderson placed a hand on Jake's arm. "You're a good man," she said softly. "We won't forget this." Jake watched them leave, his heart full but his wallet a little lighter. It wasn't the first time he'd helped someone out, but something about this moment felt different. Little did he know, the seeds of kindness he had sown were about to grow into something extraordinary. The next day, the morning rush at Rosie's was unusually busy. Jake darted between tables, balancing trays and refilling coffee cups with practiced ease. Despite the chaos, his mind kept drifting back to the Hendersons. He hoped they hadn't felt too embarrassed about last night. It wasn't a big deal to him, just the right thing to do, but he could tell their pride had been wounded. By mid-afternoon, the diner had quieted down. Jake leaned against the counter, sipping a glass of water. He didn't notice the man walking through the door until the bell jingled sharply. Looking up, Jake saw someone unfamiliar. The man was in his 40s, sharply dressed in a tailored navy suit. His polished shoes clicked against the tiled floor as he approached the counter. Jake set his glass down and straightened up, unsure of what to expect. "Jake," the man asked, his voice warm but firm. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" The man smiled and extended a hand. I'm David Henderson. My parents told me what you did for them last night. Jake shook his hand, feeling a little self-conscious. Oh, it was nothing, really. They're such wonderful people. I didn't want them to feel uncomfortable. David's smile deepened. It wasn't nothing to them or to me. They've been talking about it all morning. My parents aren't the kind of people who accept help easily. What you did meant the world to them. Jake felt his cheeks flush. I'm glad they're okay. I just wanted to make sure their night stayed special. David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. I came to thank you in person and to give you this. Jake hesitated but took the envelope, feeling its weight in his hands. Inside was a crisp stack of bills, more money than he'd seen in months. He quickly looked back at David, his expression a mix of surprise and confusion. I can't accept this, Jake said, shaking his head. I didn't help them to get a reward. I know, David said, his tone sincere. And that's exactly why you should take it. You're a good man, Jake. My parents were lucky to have you looking out for them. Jake still felt uneasy, but the truth was, the money could make a real difference in his life. He finally nodded. Thank you. This is incredibly generous. David leaned against the counter, studying Jake for a moment. You know, my parents also told me you're a pretty good listener. They said you talked about cooking. Jake nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, I've always loved it. My dream was to go to culinary school, but life had other plans. David's eyes lit up with interest. Do you still cook? At home, I mean. Whenever I can, Jake said. I like experimenting with recipes, but it's just a hobby now. Well, I own a few restaurants, David said casually, as though it wasn't a big deal. I know how hard it is to get started in this industry. If you're interested, I'd love for you to come by one of my places in the city. We could see what you've got. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Are you serious? Completely, David said. You seem like someone who works hard and cares about people. That's the kind of person I want on my team. Think about it. If you're interested, here's my card. He handed Jake a sleek business card with his name and contact information embossed in silver. Jake stared at it, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. I don't know, Jake admitted. I've never worked in a high-end restaurant before. I'm not sure I'd be good enough. David's smile was encouraging. The best chefs start somewhere. Give me a call if you decide to take a chance. With that, David stood, nodding politely before heading for the door. As the bell jingled again, Jake looked down at the card in his hand. It felt like an opportunity he couldn't ignore, but the thought of leaving the safety of Rosie's and stepping into an unknown world was terrifying. That evening, Jake sat in his small apartment, staring at the envelope of money and David's card on the table in front of him. The idea of chasing his dream felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. But deep down, he knew one thing for sure: the kindness he'd shown to the Hendersons had opened a door he never expected. Now, he just had to find the courage to walk through it. The following Monday, Jake found himself pacing the small kitchen of his apartment. David's card sat on the counter, its pristine edges mocking his hesitation. He'd spent the weekend mulling over the offer, vacillating between excitement and doubt. Could he really step into a world he'd only dreamed about? He thought of the Hendersons, their gratitude shining through every word they'd spoken that night. He thought of David's belief in him, a stranger who had looked him in the eye and seen something worth nurturing. With a deep breath, Jake grabbed his phone and dialed the number. David Henderson speaking, came the calm, assured voice on the other end. Hi, Mr. Henderson. This is Jake, the waiter from Rosie's. Jake's voice wavered slightly. I've been thinking about your offer. If it's still on the table, I'd like to give it a shot. David's enthusiasm was palpable. I'm glad you called. The offer absolutely stands. Can you come by the restaurant tomorrow? I'd like to introduce you to the team and see what you can do in the kitchen. Jake agreed, and as he hung up, he felt a wave of nervous anticipation wash over him. This was a chance to prove himself. The next morning, Jake arrived at the address David had provided. The restaurant, a sleek establishment with polished glass doors and a modern aesthetic, was worlds away from Rosie's diner. Jake smoothed his shirt, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. David greeted him in the foyer, shaking his hand warmly. "Glad you made it. Come on, I'll show you around." The tour was overwhelming. The kitchen was a whirlwind of precision and efficiency, with chefs bustling around like parts of a well-oiled machine. Stainless steel counters gleamed under bright lights, and the air was thick with the aroma of sizzling garlic and fresh herbs. "You'll be shadowing our sous chef today," David explained. "I want you to get a feel for how we work here." The sous chef, a no-nonsense woman named Clara, gave Jake a curt nod and handed him an apron. "Let's see what you've got," she said, gesturing toward a workstation. Jake dove in, chopping vegetables, assembling plates, and doing whatever tasks Clara assigned him. At first, his hands fumbled under the pressure, but as the hours passed, his confidence grew. He found a rhythm, his passion for cooking reigniting with every sizzling pan and fragrant garnish. By the end of the shift, Jake was exhausted but exhilarated. David approached him as he was cleaning up, a thoughtful expression on his face. "How'd it feel?" David asked. Jake wiped his hands on his apron, a tired smile spreading across his face. "Challenging but incredible. I forgot how much I love this." David nodded, pleased. "You did well for your first day. I'd like you to come back tomorrow. We'll see how you handle the dinner rush." Jake's heart soared. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Over the next few weeks, Jake became a regular presence in the kitchen. He worked harder than he ever had, learning from Clara and the other chefs, soaking up techniques and advice like a sponge. The long hours were grueling, but Jake didn't mind. For the first time in years, he felt like he was moving towards something meaningful. Despite the challenges, there were moments of doubt. One evening, after a particularly tough service, Jake sat alone in the break room, his head in his hands. Clara found him there, her stern demeanor softening. "You're doing fine," she said. "This job isn't easy, but you've got heart. Don't forget why you started." Jake nodded, her words giving him the push he needed to keep going. One Friday night, as the restaurant buzzed with the energy of a full house, David called Jake into his office. Jake wiped his hands on his apron nervously as he stepped inside. "Take a seat," David said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Jake sat, his pulse racing. Had he done something wrong? "I've been watching you these past weeks," David began. "You've worked hard, and you've grown a lot in a short time. I think it's time we make this official." Jake blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "Official?" David smiled. "How would you feel about joining the team as a junior chef? The position comes with the salary, benefits, and a real chance to advance in this industry." Jake's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Completely," David said. "You've earned it." Emotion welled up in Jake's chest. He thought of all the struggles that had brought him to this moment, the late nights at Rosie's, the bills that never stopped coming, the doubts he'd carried for so long. And yet, here he was, being offered a future he'd only dreamed of. "I'd be honored," Jake said, his voice thick with gratitude. David extended his hand, and as Jake shook it, he felt a sense of pride and purpose unlike anything he'd experienced before. That night, Jake walked home under the stars, a new chapter of his life unfolding with every step. The weeks following Jake's promotion were a whirlwind. Each day brought new challenges, from perfecting delicate sauces to managing the stress of busy dinner services. Though the pressure was immense, Jake found himself thriving. His colleagues began to respect him, seeing his determination and willingness to learn. Clara, once stoic and stern, occasionally cracked a smile and even offered praise for his progress. One evening, After service had ended and the kitchen was quiet, Jake lingered to experiment with a recipe that had been bouncing around in his mind. He'd been encouraged to explore his creativity, and tonight he felt brave enough to try. He carefully prepared the dish, his hands moving with precision. The aroma filled the kitchen, drawing curious glances from the cleaning crew. When it was finished, Jake plated it meticulously, then took a step back, admiring his work. Trying out something new, David's voice came from the doorway. He'd stayed late to finish some paperwork and now leaned against the frame, watching Jake with interest. Jake nodded. "I've been thinking about this one for a while. It's a twist on the chicken pot pie my grandmother used to make." David walked over, inspecting the plate. "It looks fantastic. Mind if I try it?" Jake hesitated for a moment, then handed over a fork. David took a bite, his expression thoughtful. "This is excellent," he said finally. "Comforting, but refined. You've got something here." Jake's chest swelled with pride. "Thank you. It means a lot to hear that." David set the fork down and fixed Jake with a serious look. "Have you thought about where you see yourself in 5 years? 10 years? Jake hesitated. The question felt daunting, but he answered honestly. "I'd love to have my own place someday, a restaurant where people feel at home, like they belong. But right now I just want to keep learning and improving." David nodded, clearly impressed. "You've got the right mindset. And when the time comes, I'll be here to help you make that dream a reality." Jake was stunned by the offer but managed to stammer out a thank you. As David left, Jake stood alone in the kitchen, his heart racing. The idea of owning his own restaurant had always felt like a distant fantasy, but now it seemed closer than ever. The following weekend, Jake decided to visit the Hendersons to share his progress. With a small bouquet of flowers and a box of pastries from the restaurant, he made his way to their modest home. Mrs. Henderson answered the door, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Jake, what a surprise. Come in. Come in." He stepped inside, greeted by the familiar warmth of their home. Mr. Henderson was sitting in his favorite armchair, a crossword puzzle in hand. He smiled broadly when he saw Jake. "Look who it is," Mr. Henderson exclaimed. "Our favorite waiter turned chef." Jake laughed, setting the flowers on the table. "I wanted to thank you both. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have gotten this opportunity." "Nonsense," Mrs. Henderson said, waving a hand. "It was your kindness and talent that brought you here. We're just glad to see you thriving." Over tea and pastries, Jake shared stories from the restaurant and his plans for the future. The Hendersons listened intently, their pride in him evident. Before leaving, Jake handed them an envelope. "I've been meaning to give this back," he said. Inside was the money David had given him at the diner. Mrs. Henderson tried to protest, but Jake held up a hand. "I'm doing well now, thanks to all of you. It's only right." They accepted reluctantly, and as Jake walked home, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The Hendersons had been the catalyst for his transformation, and he vowed to honor their faith in him by continuing to work hard and spread kindness. At the restaurant, Jake's journey wasn't without setbacks. There were moments when dishes didn't turn out as planned, or when the stress of the kitchen threatened to overwhelm him. But each time, he remembered the Hendersons' encouragement and David's belief in his potential. Those memories gave him the strength to persevere. As the months passed, Jake grew not only as a chef but as a person. He learned to lead with compassion, mentoring new hires and creating a positive environment in the kitchen. His creativity flourished, and his dishes became some of the most popular on the menu. One evening, after another successful service, Jake stood in the kitchen, watching his team clean up. He felt a profound sense of contentment. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full of purpose and promise. He thought back to the night he'd paid for the Hendersons' dinner, a small act of kindness that had set so much in motion. It reminded him of something his grandmother used to say: kindness has a way of coming back to you when you least expect it. Looking around at the bustling kitchen, Jake realized how true those words were. This was only the beginning of his story, but he couldn't wait to see where it would lead. Months turned into a year, and Jake's life continued to flourish in ways he never imagined. His reputation as a creative and dependable chef grew, and David frequently praised him during staff meetings. What started as a position of chance had blossomed into a role of respect, with Jake often entrusted with designing new dishes and managing parts of the kitchen during peak hours. But despite his progress, Jake never forgot his roots or the people who had helped him along the way. One evening, after another busy dinner service, David called Jake into his office. The room was warm and inviting, lined with books on culinary arts and photographs of David's restaurants. David began, motioning for him to sit. "You've done exceptional work here. I've watched you grow from someone unsure of their place to a leader in this kitchen. I think it's time to take things to the next level." Jake tilted his head, unsure of what David meant. "I'm opening a new restaurant," David continued, his voice steady but excited. "It's a smaller concept, more intimate, focused on comfort food with a modern twist. I want you to run it as the head chef." Jake froze, his mind racing. "Me? A head chef, are you sure?" David chuckled. "Of course I'm sure. You've proven yourself time and again. The way you connect with people through your food, the passion you bring, it's exactly what this new restaurant needs." Jake's chest swelled with pride and disbelief. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," David said with a grin. "And start thinking about your menu. We'll be opening in 6 months." Jake nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Yes, absolutely yes." The next 6 months were a blur of preparation. Jake poured himself into the project, designing a menu inspired by his upbringing and the dishes that brought him comfort. He thought of the Hendersons, his grandmother, and even the simple meals he'd prepared for himself during tough times. Each dish was crafted with heart, reflecting the journey that had brought him here. Opening night was a roaring success. The small dining room was packed, the air buzzing with energy and the scent of freshly prepared food. Jake moved between the kitchen and the dining room, ensuring everything ran smoothly. His team, many of whom he had trained personally, worked seamlessly, their camaraderie evident in every action. Toward the end of the evening, Jake noticed a familiar pair sitting at a corner table. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson were there, smiling as they sampled the dishes. Jake approached them, his heart full. "You made it," he said, unable to keep the joy out of his voice. Mrs. Henderson beamed. "Of course we did. We wouldn't miss this for the world." "We're so proud of you," Mr. Henderson added, his voice thick with emotion. "Look at what you've built." Jake knelt by their table, suddenly feeling like the same waiter who had once served them at Rosie's. "I couldn't have done it without you." That night at the diner, it changed everything. Mrs. Henderson reached out, placing a hand on Jake's. "It changed everything for us too. You reminded us that there's kindness in the world, and that's a gift we'll never forget." As the evening wound down, Jake stood in the kitchen, watching the final plates leave the pass. The journey had been long and challenging, but every step had been worth it. He thought about his past Rosie's diner, the night he paid for the Hendersons' dinner, and the unexpected opportunity that followed. Each moment had been a thread in the tapestry of his life, weaving together a story of kindness, perseverance, and transformation. And though he'd achieved so much, Jake knew his journey was far from over. The restaurant was just the beginning, a foundation on which he could continue to build, inspire, and give back. As the staff celebrated a successful opening night, Jake stepped outside, the cool evening air brushing against his face. He looked up at the stars, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything that had led him to this point. One small act of kindness had changed his life forever. Now, he was ready to do the same for others,